Hey everyone, my guest today is Ralph DeFalco. Ralph is a writer, historian, and national security intelligence professional with a career that spanned 5 decades and 5 continents. Retired from a 25-year career in the rank of captain in the U.S. Navy, he also served as a civilian intelligence professional on the Pentagon staff of the Director of Naval Intelligence. He is a distinguished graduate and former faculty member of the National Intelligence University. He graduated with highest distinction from the U.S. Naval War College and later served as fleet professor on the college's faculty. DeFalco writes about history, world affairs, national security intelligence, strategy and policy, and geopolitics. His essays, articles, commentaries, and reviews have appeared in a variety of publications and online. His current work is online at Law and Liberty. Welcome to the show, Ralph. I want to thank you for being here today.
Well, Sam, thank you for having me on.
Of course. Would you be able to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now?
Well, I spent 25 years in the United States Navy and another 18 years as a civilian senior professional at the Pentagon. I served as a Naval Intelligence Officer. And during my career, I had some terrific opportunities not only to work with some excellent professionals, but to get a firsthand look at the kinds of issues that are confronting the United States today. And I think that was the genus, if you might call it, for writing my novel, The Counterfeit.
Okay. I always like to hear about people's different backgrounds, especially if you're working with the government. There's just so many different things that you could be doing, even with just like the military. Everyone is so different.
Absolutely right.
But
There's dozens and dozens of professional specialties in the military.
mhm.
And it sounds trite, but the reality is it does take a team to make the fight.
Yeah.
And currently, as you know, we are in a conflict with Iran. You look at the number of different people who are involved, our military specialties. You have the Air Force, you have the Army, you have the Navy. And inside each of those organizations, there are dozens of dedicated professionals, people who've made substantial careers in the military and have learned some exceptional skills. In my case, as an intelligence officer, first in the reserves and then for many years on active duty, I
Mhm.
had an opportunity to go to some of the top schools in the country. The Navy actually sent me to the National Intelligence University to pursue a master's degree. And later
Yeah.
in my career, I went to Georgetown University and completed my doctorate.
Wow. Where's the National Intelligence University?
The National Intelligence University is a joint effort to take mid-career officers and civilians and give
Uh-huh.
them a grounding and an understanding and advanced tools and techniques in national security intelligence. The faculty is primarily composed of intelligence professionals who
Mhm.
have the background, the experience, and the teaching ability to come into the classroom, share their real world knowledge. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Share their
Yeah.
knowledge, and at the same time, put students through a fairly rigorous curriculum to
Mhm.
teach them analytical techniques, to put the perspective of the intelligence community in its appropriate context, and to teach, as I did for several years, the history of the intelligence community.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's just so interesting, and in all the different education entities that you're able to go to and learn. My nephew's in the Air Force, and I never knew anyone in the Air Force before that. So then just learning how that's different from like the Navy and the National Guard, and we the National Guard's big here,
Oh, okay.
but
Well,
yeah,
you definitely have something called service cultures,
yeah,
and you see that on display in things like the national televised events between the services, especially the Army Navy football game. So go
yes.
Navy.
Yes. I mean, I don't watch a lot of sports, so I'm married now, so I'm watching more sports than I did before, but I did not even know about the Army Navy game until I think, the 2025 one. maybe. And that's really cool that they get their own time slot now for that game.
Yeah, I think it
And
is kind of great. It really is very interesting. Service culture is pervasive. There's unique facets to each culture in each of the armed services.
uh-huh.
I think when I wrote The Counterfeit, I was very much aware of service culture and the interplay between various characters.
Yeah.
My protagonist is Philip Nolan, Commander,
Okay.
United States Navy, and he interacts with other people who are parolees now after having lost the Pacific War to China.
Okay.
American military officers have been paroled as part of the armistice that ended the war. And
Mhm.
Nolan's interaction with various parolees is an instrumental part of the novel.
Okay. Yeah, that would be interesting to read about. So, are parts of the book based on real world events?
The entire book is an extrapolation of
Okay.
real world events. What
Okay.
I've done in this novel basically is take a phenomenon that intelligence analysts know as creeping normalcy or creeping
Okay.
normalization, where a
Okay.
small series of almost insignificant but incremental changes occur over time and lead to a significant change. But they occur over time in such a way as to be almost unnoticeable or go unmentioned. So, what
Yeah.
happens in the novel is the reader dives into the novel, the reader will come across changes to the American landscape that are quite believable, but a little bit beyond where we are today. Not
Mhm.
beyond the stretch of the realm of imagination, but incremental changes that seem progressive, that seem to fall into the pattern of today's American life. So, for
Yeah.
example, you will find in the novel that I talk about politicians.
Mhm.
Politicians are characterized and play a significant role in the novel, and you will see venality, you will see greed, you will see corruption, you will see the
Yeah.
lust for both power and money. And those are not uncommon to the American scene today, but they
Right.
play out in the novel in very dramatic ways and have a keen influence on the outcome of the story.
You know, I bet that's easier for the reader to put themselves in the novel, like connect with the characters and really dive into that the world.
I like to say that my characters are not mission impossibly driven. You won't
Yeah.
find one of my characters, for example, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute into a snowbank and surviving. The
Yeah.
characters in my novel grapple with issues.
Mhm.
They make mistakes. They're not comfortable with change. They interact with one another and express their doubts. They express their fears. I think this is what gives the reader an
Uh,
opportunity to identify with characters. They're not perfect. They're not supermen and superwomen. They're not
yeah.
Rambo. This is not a Rambo novel. And
Yeah.
when you do that, when you create characters like that, I believe what you've done is you've created authenticity. This is the way that readers get connected to characters, fictional characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree when you're it just the just yeah, authenticity, being more realistic. Because I always catch myself it, is I mean, more so with TV. With books, I'm able to dive in and kind of believe things a little bit more. But when you're watching TV and they're doing something that or making decisions that are just entirely unbelievable, like maybe they would make that decision, but it's just dumb. I can't I can't uh let myself believe it, I guess.
Well, the successful appreciation of works of fiction depends upon your willing suspension of disbelief. But that thread can be drawn far too tightly, and it can occasionally snap, which is the
Mhm.
phenomenon you're talking about. The thread is so tight that it breaks. It breaks its credulity with the reader or the viewer, and that's something you
Yeah.
have to avoid. I think when you're writing fiction, it's a challenge to create characters who are authentic. It's even
Yeah.
more challenging to make sure that their authentic voice stays consistent throughout the novel. And that was one of my
Mhm.
challenges. I would write something and occasionally I'd say, wait a minute, this is really not in character. This is not
Yeah.
this is not what my character would say. This is not what my character would do. And I had some help along the
Yeah.
way. I had some first run readers, developmental readers, I guess you could say, and
Mhm.
they would help point those things out. And I think that's one of the challenges as a writer is to be consistent. I had written and published, as you know, nonfiction for many years. So this
Yeah.
is my first novel. This is my first foray into fiction. And it's
Yeah.
quite the challenge and it's quite different.
Yes. So I had talked to someone else about this as well, that it's almost the like you said, the writing is completely different, but you're writing to captivate the audience, not necessarily like inform them every sentence. You don't have to be um like succinct. Like it's more straightforward with nonfiction, whereas you want a little bit of mystery with fiction, right? To kind of
There's a great deal
yeah.
of truth in that. There's really only four reasons to write. First is to persuade. The
Uh-huh.
second is to educate. The third is to entertain, and the fourth is to infuriate. So those are the four reasons why you put pen to paper.
Yeah.
And if you bear that in mind, in my novel, I'm somewhere between entertaining and informing. As a
Okay.
novelist, I constantly fell back on historical events, things that have
Mhm.
actually happened to inform the dynamic of my novel. Some readers
Yeah.
will find it very unusual. I was tempted at one point to put footnotes in my novel to
Yeah.
reference things that had actually happened that
Yeah.
mirror what's going on in the novel. And I elected not to do that, but I reconciled with using endnotes instead. So in the back of the book, there are chapter notes to the novel.
Okay. Okay. In the I was because I was kind of looking I was flipping through. Also, is it really 69 chapters?
It is.
Okay. So what I liked about that is which I want to hear more about the endnotes too, but so the 69 chapters thing. So I like to finish a chapter before I go to bed, but if it's long, I don't know, I might not finish it, you know? I just feel like I'm more accomplished if the
Sure.
chapters are shorter and then it's like, "Oh, well, I read 3," you know, instead of 1.
It's interesting you mention that because I believe short chapters, especially in a novel like this, a thriller,
Mhm.
chapters tend to compel the reader to move forward.
Yeah.
They're bite-sized nuggets, and people have also said, "Gee whiz, I read the novel, I got done with this chapter, and I had to go on to the next chapter because I just had to know what happened." And
Yes.
it's a technique that many novelists use. It's called creating a cliffhanger.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I like to think of my novel as a cliffhanger without cliffs. There's
Yeah.
there's there's no there's no artificial cliff, no Hollywood prop cliff that my characters are hanging from. They're hanging from real danger, or they're
Mhm.
hanging from indecision. They're hanging from indecisiveness. They're hanging from some event that just occurred that they don't know how to deal with. And that's what creates, I think, the tension
Mhm.
in this novel. So many people have remarked, oh, when you wrote The Counterfeit, did you realize you were going to be putting all these tense moments in? Yeah, I did actually. And
Yeah.
it was done deliberately to drive the story forward and give the reader something to grab onto and say, "Uh-oh, what's next?"
Yeah. Yes. Well, and just like you were mentioning, it's where well, I had to read another chapter. Well, if the chapters are a little shorter, it's okay, just one more. Okay, just one more. Whereas then if it's a long one, all right, I guess I'm done reading for the night, you know. But
It's what did they say, Forrest Gump? Life is like a box of chocolates. You
yeah,
just have to have
yeah,
one more, one more, one more. And I think
yeah.
that's part of what makes a novel compelling. When the reader says, I'll just read one more chapter. I'll just
yeah.
as you've done. And that's, I think, what draws readers in. I think that's what
Mhm.
creates the linkage between the reader and fiction itself. When people can get to the point where they say, I want more, then fiction is doing its job. It's drawing the reader in, making the reader tune into the trend, the arc of the story.
Yeah. Yes. And it's easier to pick back up to read it at that starting point instead of in the middle of a chapter. Yeah, you just connect better, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. And you'll notice modern fiction tends to have shorter chapters.
Mhm.
Unless you're a John Updike and you're writing these monumental 600 or 700 page works, or you're Tom Clancy and you're
Uh-huh.
writing 1,000 pager.
Yeah.
The thriller genre tends to be a little tighter. At least that was my intent going in and writing the
Mhm.
Counterfeit, was to make it tighter and more compelling in that way.
Yeah. Yes. So back to the end notes. It, you said that they talk about like how it relates to real world. Is
In many cases, it's a
okay.
reference to something that happened historically. In some
Okay.
cases, the endnotes refer to something in literature. And in fact, I'll read you one endnote to give you an
Okay.
idea of what I'm talking about in that regard.
Okay.
The protagonist in my novel is Commander Philip Nolan. And the name Philip Nolan simply did not come out of thin air.
Okay.
It was very purposely picked. And here's the end note that references the name Philip Nolan. Edward Everett Hale was a prominent 19th century American short story writer and historian. His best known work, A Man Without a Country, features protagonist Philip Nolan. The story tells the trials of a man exiled from his own country. This
Mhm.
short story was often included in American literature anthologies for junior high school students. Sadly, that is no longer the case. So there's
Yeah.
a little editorialization in there as well, but there's things in my novel that link to literature, as I said, link to historical incidents, link to
Mhm.
real world events. And when that was appropriate, I put in a little note. And
Yeah.
real world history, I am a historian, real world events, history, I think informs a great deal of this novel. It makes it unique in that regard. The Counterfeit is just not off the shelf speculative fiction. And
Yeah.
some people have said, "Hey, this is predictive stuff. This is leaning forward into what our future as Americans could look like." And I
Mhm.
said, "Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. It is leaning forward. It is in some ways predictive, and it's not altogether pleasantly predictive either."
Right.
So that's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, eh, you know, I definitely wanna talk about leaning into the future, but you also made me think about I I'm old enough now that there's like, one of my coworkers is young enough that he doesn't remember 9/11, and so there to someone my age or older, we could be talking about something related to that, we'll say, and he's not gonna pick up at all what we're talking about. He's gonna have to learn about certain things about it just from that day, just experiencing how it happened, and it's so I yeah, I think that, again, the end notes would be good to help offer insight from somebody who maybe doesn't remember that or wasn't alive during whatever you're referencing.
The span of history is fascinating. You've heard the remark, I'm sure, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Mhm.
It is cyclical in some ways, but the reason we don't learn from history is, one, we no longer teach history in our schools in the United States. That is a critical oversight. What we're teaching
Yeah,
in our schools is not what I call a false narrative of American history, but a polluted narrative. The narrative is
yeah,
polluted with ideology. So that's part of the problem. We don't learn from history because the history that's presented is polluted with ideological references and ideas. The second
yeah,
reason I think that we don't really learn from history is that many Americans believe, oh, that's only something that can happen overseas. That can't possibly happen here. I
yeah.
had to chuckle the other day. I saw a news report. I was watching some television, saw a news report of a protest rally, and
Mhm.
I almost fell out of my chair. I saw protesters carrying the communist flag in their
Yeah,
parade, the hammer and sickle. Now, these are people who have absolutely, obviously, no idea of how
Yeah.
repressive and how murderous the Soviet regime was. And obviously, these are people who have not read about it in their history books. If they're so brazen
Hmm.
as to carry on the streets of this country, the United States, a communist era hammer and sickle flag,
Yeah.
that tells me a lot. And once again, to continue to say it can't happen here, read the Counterfeit, and you'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited because I'm going to read it. So I didn't have enough time to read it before our interview today, but I do try to read the books that my guests write, and then I can invite you back on the show and talk to you about
Oh,
it.
that,
And
that, that would be a lot of fun. After you've read it,
yeah,
we can have quite the interesting conversation about characters and dialogue, and
yes,
also about the thematic concepts of the movie. I've heard from several people who've read it, who've gotten in touch
uh,
with me and said, I just want to talk to you about this one chapter. It was so interesting. How did you come up with it? Why did you write it like this? I
yeah,
actually had one reader contact me and say, wow, I read this one character's soliloquy. There's a very, which I did not do in the novel
uh-huh,
very much at all. There's one section of the novel where one character is speaking for quite an extended period of time.
okay,
And she's making these remarks to Philip Nolan. And
okay,
she calls it a confession. And at the end of the confession, the reader, I hope, realizes why I wrote that it was a confession without the need for absolution and without forgiveness. So
okay,
it was really, and again, to have this individual that read the book call me up and say, I read that soliloquy and it was great.
yeah,
That made me feel good because it
oh
was
yeah,
exactly what I wanted to have happen.
yeah. Yeah, that would be nice to hear the feedback. I have a friend that reads a lot of the same books as I do, and I'm like, if these authors could hear our conversations that we're having about certain things, that I think they'd get a kick out of it,
Well,
but
it's
maybe
funny.
not.
It's funny to hear you say that because I would be delighted to have this book picked up by a book club and
Oh, yeah.
have an opportunity to sit with everyone in a room after they've read the book and just
Uh-huh.
have a freewheeling conversation. I think that would
Yeah.
be absolutely fascinating. I think it would add an entirely new dimension to
Yeah.
what's going on here. And book clubs are very popular down in my area. There's at least a half dozen that I know of. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
popular in your area, but when people get together after reading a book, it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be fiction. It can be nonfiction. It can be I don't care what it is. When
Yeah.
people get together and discuss something as a group, the whole tone of the conversation gets elevated. It's the free interchange of ideas that
Yeah.
enervate people and energize them and bring their understanding up to a whole new level. So I think that's a wonderful comment that you made. If you get together with your friends, other people who've
Uh-huh.
read the book, and discuss it, you're going to get a whole nother level of meaning out of what you've read.
Yeah. Yes, because it's also interesting that people interpret things differently. Like, they might take something completely different out of the book or a scene in the book than I did.
That's an interesting comment because many times people who've read a book and have an opportunity to chat with the author say, I read this. Did you mean that this is what and this? And the
Yeah.
author, if he's smart, the author will say, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I wrote it for a reason. My reason was to get you engaged in the story, you, the reader. And if the
Yeah.
reader comes away with a different understanding than what I intended, well, two things are happening. Either there's a larger arc to the story, or I didn't express myself as clearly as I wanted to, making a point. But the other
Yeah.
thing that happens ties back to something you said a minute ago. People's perceptions are altered by their sense of history. People who weren't alive on 9/11
Mhm.
have a completely different view, perhaps, of worldwide terrorism than people who lived through that experience. People who lived
Yeah.
during the Vietnam War, I was alive during the Vietnam War, I was a young man. People who lived during that period have a whole nother idea of what it means when you say get bogged down in foreign wars. The debate
Yeah.
today. We don't want to get bogged down in a foreign war in Iran.
Yeah.
Well, they're talking about the remembrances of Vietnam, the Vietnam era. a long,
Right.
arduous, deadly foreign war. So you're right. People, if they don't understand those connections, there's a whole nother level of meaning that you cannot connect with.
Right. Yeah. Do you do you ever have people who have read your book come to you and they like maybe you did something or wrote in a way that you had no idea that that's how they would take it, but it's like, oh, that was a kind of a happy, clever thing that happened on accident.
I've had readers who pointed out to me that they saw a particular passage or read a chapter or a section, and it
Hmm.
just tickled them. It made sense. It just resonated with them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's happened. I think the other thing that's going on when you write fiction is you're trying to create bridges. You're trying to create a bridge between what you're writing about and what you want the reader to understand. So the written word is the only bridge that you have. You
Hmm.
can't have dialogue with a reader. It's a solitary occupation. When you sit down and read a book, you're by yourself. You
Yeah.
don't have the author at your elbow. So you can't reach over and say, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" It's unlike going to a
Yeah.
mu it's a completely different experience, for example, than going to a movie theater, right? Where you're
Yeah.
surrounded by people. You're reacting to how they react. When you're
Yeah.
sitting and reading a book, it's purposefully a solitary experience. It's you, the author, the book, and your mind. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
That makes
it
sense.
does, isn't it? And
Yeah.
Samantha, Sam, it's a completely different ball game too to write
Yeah.
fiction as opposed to nonfiction.
Oh, I bet. I mean,
Yeah,
with nonfiction, you don't really have an option of which direction you want to go. You're just
there's a lot of
yeah.
truth in that. Someone asked me what was the biggest challenge in writing the counterfeit between what I normally do, and as you know, I write a great deal of nonfiction, reviews, essays, articles,
Mhm.
geopolitical analysis. I do quite a bit of that writing. The
Yeah.
biggest difference they want to know between fiction and nonfiction. In fiction, I have to create characters. In
Yeah.
nonfiction, people already exist. Now, you can have
Yeah.
different interpretations of what people do, and that happens all the time. We see that in the media all the time, right? Different interpretations of what the president's doing, or what this congressman said, or this
Mhm.
senator said, or what this local official had to do. But in fiction, you have a tableau on which you are placing characters, and you have to
Yeah.
create everything about that character, how they look, how they talk, how they speak and act and interact with other people. Even what they look like,
Mhm.
all that has to be manufactured literally out of thin air.
Yeah.
Unlike a fiction, unlike nonfiction, you have to manufacture, create all that. And it goes back to something I said earlier. It has to be authentic. It has to
Yeah.
resonate with the reader in such a way that the reader said, yep, this is a real person I'm reading about. The willing
Yeah.
suspension of disbelief once again. I'm reading about somebody who's real, not a fictional character. This is a real person.
Right. Yeah. I have to commend you for that because I do solo episodes for this as well, and after being in school and doing so many for my master's, I had to do so many research papers and, um, when I'm writing episodes for the podcast, my solo episodes, it's very hard for me to not, um, sound like a robot or just sound monotonous or it really takes some effort to kind of come out of that and sound a little bit more personable for people to want to read it instead of just feeling like they're listening to a textbook, I guess.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick.
Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high-protein snacks for on-the-go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout.
Nobody ever reads a textbook out loud unless it's a professor in a classroom who's not prepared to teach.
Yeah.
It's the only time that happens. And you wouldn't want to either, because it's generally pretty boring stuff.
Yeah.
Literature, on the other hand, even though I said earlier it's a solitary experience to read a book, there are people who will read passages from books aloud, and that can be a memorable and a magical experience. And I'll give you just one little insight into that. When you were a child, when your parents read to you, wasn't that a magical experience?
Oh yeah, I can still hear some of the stuff in my head, you know.
Yeah, and it's remarkable the number of people that I've talked to over the years who said, "Oh yes, when I was growing up, my mother read to me, or my father would read to me." You know, the whole very American-looking image of reading your child a bedtime story, that resonates with people. It really does. People look at that, understand it, appreciate it for what it is. It's not just the connection of the parent and the child. It's the communication that occurs with the written word. It's the imagery, it's the story that's created. And many of the stories, as you know, I'm sure from growing up as a kid, Sam, many of those stories have morals.
Yeah, that is true.
That's how you teach. So children learn from their adults, and they learn even more when adults read to them. So I'm a big fan of having adults, parents especially, read to their children. That's great stuff. That really is great.
Yeah, it creates learning and bonding moments for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I The Counterfeit is not the kind of a book that people would read out loud. It's definitely adult fiction. There's no question about that. I'd say mature teens and adults, this is the audience. It's not a children's book, but it has aspects, I think, that appeal to a very broad audiences. The Counterfeit, I think, will appeal to people who like thrillers. It will appeal to people who like geopolitical novels. It'll appeal in many senses to people who like action novels as well. Although, as I said before, my characters don't jump out of airplanes without parachutes. But there are elements here of real action, and the actions have real consequences in this novel. Yeah. So when people read The Counterfeit, they're going to have an opportunity to connect on a variety of different levels. They'll connect with characters. They'll connect with the storyline. They'll certainly connect with trends that they see. And hopefully, as I mentioned earlier with the chapter notes, they'll reconnect with some aspects of history.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always fun when you can do that, I think. Yeah, especially, I mean, as some when you start reading young, I feel like you're not reading a lot of things that connect you to the real world or things that you've lived through. And as I've gotten older and explored other genres, I guess, it is fun to be able to personally connect to, even if it's fiction, to the characters on what they've been through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so much of our fiction today in the American marketplace is what I refer to as escapist.
Mhm.
Sometimes dystopian. There's sometimes thrillers, but the common thread is escapism. The Hunger Games is a good example.
Oh
All the
yeah.
sci-fi books are example
Yeah.
with dragons and ogres, and
Yeah.
it takes you beyond the imagination into an author's imagination, beyond your
Mhm.
imagination into an author's imagination, and it's escapist fiction. The Counterfeit is not escapist. It's um, it's grounded in reality. It's
Mhm.
grounded in real world events. It's grounded in what could conceivably happen in the future. And
Yeah.
those elements, I think, remove it from the whole idea of being escapist fiction. It's certainly not. It's in some ways, as people have said, it's predictive, it's
Mhm.
prognostication, it's leaning forward into the future, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like, so does it kind of build off of where our country's at right now generally, and then move forward from there?
It does build off what is happening in our country now.
Mhm.
Part of the novel is rooted in an ideological divide.
Okay.
We see a great deal of ideological separation in this country.
Mm.
We're seeing a level of separation, frankly, as a historian, that I believe we have not seen since before the American Civil War. There are
Yeah.
wide separations in American society. There are divergent, wholly divergent opinions and
Yeah.
attitudes with very little common ground. So the Counterfeit exploits that and pulls the thread on that out into the future to show what happens when those ideological divides truly exist in society and culturally as well. The
Yeah.
novel also explores what happens to a nation that's bankrupt. That
Yeah.
certainly ties into what's going on today. The trillions and tens of trillions of dollars we have in debt.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah.
a frightening scenario. And in my novel, it plays out. It plays out in a nation that is so deeply mired in debt that it
Yeah.
has to be administered by a foreign power. Because America as a country can no longer govern its own economy, its own indebtedness, its own society. So a foreign power comes in the guise of the United Nations. So in the Counterfeit, the United Nations is pulling the strings, is basically piping the tune that Washington dances to.
Oh man.
And at some point in this novel, we find that China is deeply involved in that
Mhm.
string pulling, so much so that they are interfering with the next presidential election.
I'm
Frightening.
gonna really like this book.
Well,
So,
you'll have to promise me what you'll do after you read it. We'll have another conversation,
oh,
and
absolutely.
it'll
Yeah.
be fun. And
Yes.
have you ever had two or more guests on at the same time? Someone else that might read the book.
Um, no, but that would be fun and it would work.
Well, it goes
So,
back to what you said earlier. You love to talk to someone else who's read the book. Now
yeah.
you have a conversation with the author, two people who read the book, and it could be quite the candid exploration and
Yeah.
very interesting
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a really good idea. I'm gonna have to
Yeah, after
ask
you
a
read the
couple of
book,
my
it could be
reading
great.
friends.
So
Yeah.
you must have some other questions for me about why I wrote the book and let me ask you one. Why would you pick up and read a book like this? You were sent a copy so that you could prepare for this
Mhm.
podcast. But
Yeah.
ordinarily, is this the kind of book that you would read?
Well, it's not quite the same. I like some of it kind of I read Charlene Harris. Do you
Okay.
know?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's yeah, some of it does get into the sci-fi, but there is a thrill to the books, you know, they're also they can be more in the mystery category, but I have seen them placed in the thriller category. So I was thinking about a couple of her books while you were talking. Um, it's and I do like obviously politics because we're here on a
We're on a
political
political show, yeah.
yeah. So, I wouldn't say that it would be one that I would pick out, just out of a group of books because I haven't gone specifically towards thrillers, but I've been, branching out with what I'm reading based off of what my guests are writing. So it has been quite the experience kind of stepping away from the same old authors that I'd been reading. So
Well, I've had people tell me that you may bill this as a thriller,
uh-huh.
and it has elements of dystopian fiction in it. I've also had people tell me who've read it who said this is Orwellian. This reminds me of 1984. And
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you get to that point where people are making those kinds of connections, as an author, I think that's very gratifying.
Yeah.
I had one reviewer compare my work to the works of Jean Le Carre. So when that happens and you're being compared to other very successful authors, and
Yeah.
when you realize that your genre is not narrowly defined, that there's a broader error range of error.
Uh-huh.
There's a broader audience as well for this. I think that that's gratifying to an author as well, and I'm beginning to see that happen. People
Yeah.
who don't normally read thrillers like this or geopolitical books or political books are picking this up and saying, "Wow, this had more in it than I thought it might," and
Yeah.
they liked it for that reason because there are
Yeah.
different storylines.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I'm interested to see where you go with all of this, uh, you know, the stuff that's going on now and how it could turn out. It's you know, something that people who follow politics kind of think about like, okay, well what happens like we can't keep going like this. We can't keep going into debt. What, you know, I don't know.
It's crazy stuff. Well, it's interesting you say, where am I going with this? I'm actually at work right now on a sequel. So
Okay.
people have asked me, well, you did kind of leave us a little bit hanging in the air. What's going to happen to all these loose threads that you have in this novel?
Yeah.
And my response has always been, you'll have to read the sequel. You'll have to read the
Yeah.
sequel. So there is an opportunity, I think, to do exactly what you
Perfect.
want. Show the readers what happens in this novel and lay the
Mhm.
groundwork for future novels. You know, tantamount to what happens to Jack Reacher. If you look at Jack Reacher novels, you've
Uh-huh.
seen the television programming. Reacher's always lurching from one episode to the next, and there's a thread that ties it all together. But
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why people gravitate towards series and
Mhm.
sequels is they
Yeah.
understand and want to see that thread pulled tighter, 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 and go even further with the characters that they've come to know and enjoy. So that's certainly part of it as well.
Yes, that is one thing is I get attached to characters, and that's one thing that brings me back to a book to reread it because it's almost like you miss these people that don't exist.
Yep.
But
They exist for they exist in time and space as long as you have room enough in your mind for them to come in. And
yeah.
that's really how it works. That's really how it works. And some characters become indelible. There are
Mhm.
characters that you read about that you simply never forget.
Yeah.
And they're part and parcel of who you become, what your personality is, what your outlook on life is. I just, the other day, had an experience where someone mentioned The Wizard of Oz. How many
Oh,
times have you seen The Wizard of Oz and who do you remember? Well, you remember all the characters, right?
yeah.
They become indelible. So, as a
Yeah.
writer of fiction, certainly I would hope that at some point the counterfeit becomes that kind of a talisman of sorts for people.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to get to the level of the Wizard of Oz, but
Yeah.
I hope that I hope that people pick it up and find the characters very, very memorable. As I said earlier, authentic. I
Yeah.
hope the readers share some of the fears and concerns as they read the novel that the characters do, and I hope they
Yeah.
appreciate the interplay with the characters as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I'm just thinking like, yeah, I think this would be fun to have my other friend that she pops in on the show at least once a month, and we do our true crime thing. But she reads a lot, so it would be fun to have her come on and talk as well
Well,
about it after we
you
read
could
it.
probably entice her to read the book by giving her little snippets. In fact,
Yeah.
people always ask me, "Do you have a favorite part of the novel?" It's a
Uh-huh.
little bit like asking a parent who's your favorite kid, right?
Yeah.
But my father used to say it depends on which kid is in the room. But
That's
there are parts of my novel that I enjoy, and I enjoy reading to people. So
Mhm.
if by your leave, I'd like to read a small section for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you've gotten to this part yet, but let me read it.
Okay.
Our protagonist once again is Philip Nolan.
Okay.
He is a commander, United States Navy. He survives the war, of course. He survives being a POW, and now he's a parolee in Chicago.
Okay.
He's required as part of the parole agreement, part of the armistice that ended the war, paroled all American military officers. And they have to report on a regular basis to an accountability center to report their whereabouts. Okay?
Okay.
So Nolan's on the streets of Chicago. Nolan lifted his head and scanned the street. Something wasn't right. He felt as if he were being watched. Not just watched, but followed. And if he were being followed, he dared not make any sign that he knew it. Not until he had the advantage of position, a place he knew well enough from which to fight or to run. This thug would not be another desperate parolee he could talk around. Nolan listened behind him for the echo of footfalls and heard nothing. He searched for a patch of sun so he might see a moving shadow and saw nothing. He glanced to his left and caught a reflection in the darkened store window across the street. A hooded figure, long, heavy coat, hands in pockets, tall, a man keeping to the shadows, 35, 40 yards behind, quiet. Nolan knew where he was. 2 years of rambling walks had made him familiar with every street, every intersection, every building. The next corner would take him to an alcove if he turned left. A large space once open to both crossing streets had been partially walled off. He turned left and pressed himself against the wall. He would take down the shadow man as he passed by. Nolan slipped the knife from its hidden pocket, wrapped his fingers around the handle, and eased the blade free of his sleeve. The shadow man passed and hesitated. Nolan stepped forward. In one smooth motion, he took the man from behind and spun him into the wall. Nolan shoved the full weight of his body onto his left forearm, jammed it into the man's chest, and swiftly brought the tip of the knife up to the soft flesh of the exposed neck. The man threw back his hand instinctively. Nolan gasped. The man's hood had fallen away, and a thick scarf had come loose in the violence of Nolan's attack. Now he stared at half a face. No ear, scattered tufts of hair on the seared left side of the head, a milky, unseeing eye, and raw pink and white burn scar tissue ran from the temple, down the cheek and the jawline, to the throat he held at knife point. Nolan lowered the blade and stepped away. The hood flew back up, and a thin, scarred hand reached out for the tangled scarf. Too ugly to rape? She asked in a voice that failed to hide her fear in sarcasm.
Oh. Yeah, that sounds good. I I I don't know if you can hear it, but we're having storms right now, and so it was lightning and raining, and
Oh,
while you're
you're getting an a classic Iowa thunderstorm.
Yeah, but it was kind of adding to the suspense almost of the of what you're reading.
That's
So,
interesting. That's interesting.
yeah.
Well,
Yep.
this is great. I would love to
Yeah.
take you up on your offer, Sam, to have a
Yeah.
conversation with you and your friend and your audience, your wonderful audience. Want to thank everybody who's listening in, and
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you too for giving me this great opportunity to talk about writing, the craft of writing fiction, talk a little bit about myself, and talk
Yeah,
about my
of
new
course.
novel, The Counterfeit.
Yes, yes. I will be sure to put all of the links to it in the show notes. And where can everybody find it?
I always tell people, please patronize your local bookstores.
Yeah.
Your bookstore is on the forefront of freedom, the front line of freedom, freedom of ideas, freedom of expression. Go to your local bookstore. You can't find it in your local bookstore. You can find it online from Lost Coast Press. And you can also find it at bookstore.org. And of course, you can find it on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Is there anything else you want the audience to know?
I want them to know how appreciative I am if anyone would consider picking it up and reading it. And if they read it and they enjoy it, I ask them to share it with others.
Yep. Perfect. Sounds good. And leave a review. That helps too.
You leave a review on Amazon and 5 stars.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Hey, thanks, Sam.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I will keep in touch about the episode and about the book. So
Outstanding. You take care and very happy holiday to you.
Yep, you as well. Thank you so much.
Bye now.